Since he passed, he left his son who will guide you. Now, of course, the prophet's laws are all right, but there are plenty he couldn't write or put in book form. So someone had to tell you. Now, some are going to believe it and some are not. But now let me say to you as a brother, as a brother who loves Israel, please don't be the hard head. Remember, this is a Moor talking. Who's L? Saying, we love Israel. Don't be hard-headed. You think he's talking to Moors who already know what's up? No, he's talking to those wayward Moors who were following the Hebrew Israelite BS back then, that were initially members of the temple, because everybody was in the temple before they strayed off into some BS. So don't feel because you're part of Moorish Science Temple of America that we don't love Israel. And we're not talking about this Israel that just came and did whatever the Palestine. We're not talking about that. Right? They jacked that name just like they jacked everything else that they got. Right? But don't get it twisted. We don't, we love ancient Egypt. We love Timbuktu. Right? We're not against our ancient cultures as Moors. We recognize that we're in possession of all those cultures as Moors. So who are you imposters out there claiming that you have the culture? How are you telling me that you have the culture when I'm the custodian of the culture? And then you're trying to tell me about I'm not who I am. When all the records show that the Moors are the custodians of the ancient culture because ancient stuff fell. That's why there's tombs there right now that used to be temples. That's why their pyramids are just no limestone, no capstone, just stone sitting there. Nobody in and out of those. You go in those, you're dead. Yeah, because Egypt's dead. In the Adab last night, we were told not to eat meat. In the Adab meeting last night, we were told not to eat meat, but to eat anything in the fish line with scales on it. That leaves out cat and eel. Eat fish and vegetables, etc., but no meat of any kind or any strong drinks until further notice. Don't do any of these things until you hear from the grand body. July 30th, 1929. Once again, meetings at Community Center, 3140 Indiana Avenue. 3140 Indiana Avenue. Friday afternoon, 7 to 11. Sunday from 1:30 to 6:30. And 7:30 to 11 p.m. Moorish Science Temple of America. Dear governors and officers, and once again, make sure you go to your Moorish, whoever that they say that they are, and ask them, how come home office address is different from the community center address at 3140 Indiana Avenue? Is that because Moors had stuff? And if Moors had so much stuff that they even had a community center, then one, how come nobody knows about it? And two, where's the stuff? Dear governors and officers, addressing Moors as officers. Islam, get yourselves together and be ready when he comes. I am leaving Saturday, August 3rd for a tour to all temples, that all things may be understood and all wrongs made right, and other express business that must be carried on and out according to the Prophet's wishes. Peace, your brother in Islam, Emily Il, Supreme Grand Sheikh, A.H. Payne, Supreme Business Manager. Supreme Business Manager. Why we got that? Because we got businesses to take care of. March 11th, 1929. So this is Noble Drew Ali talking now. Right? So remember, we're backtracking. We showed that all these guys are a fraud because there's a letter, documented proof that they're a fraud. But they're still around today, parading around like they're Moorish Science Temple of America, have signs, have meetings, have videos on YouTube, have Facebook pages, have flags saying that they're this and that. But they're going to tell you that, oh no, well, we recognize Noble Drew Ali, but we honor the reincarnated guy. Sellouts. More, secret's going to be given up. Alright, so the other letters were written from the community center. And then I was telling you what the address was, right? I was telling you what the address was of the community center so that when you go ask them and they tell you a different, you already have the card, right? So that's really what was going down, right? Because we have 3603 Indiana Avenue. So we have 3603 Indiana Avenue is the home office address, right? So there's a home office address for Moorish Science Temple, then there's a community address which is a different address than the home office address, which is again to let you know that this thing was locked down. If we had all the way down to community centers as Moorish Americans, then we had this thing locked down. We had our community. Just like how you see everybody else that has their community right now in their language or whatever like that, we had that for Moorish Americans. So that's what we should be looking at as emulating. Because who else had stuff? Who else had stuff? Who's that? Oh yeah, Marcus Garvey, exactly. And he's the forerunner of the Moorish movement. So when I say Moorish Americans had stuff, I'm not excluding Garvey. I'm not excluding the natives of quote-unquote Black Wall Street. I'm not excluding the Palenque. It is often said that the history is written by victors, but what does the term victor mean? If victory means to enslave, to destroy languages and cultures, then yes, the Western countries are the winners. And we'll say not the Western countries because that's over here and this is not Europe. So they're not no Western nothing. Europeans aren't Westerners. Europeans are Europeans. Pale modern Europeans. France, Spain, England, and Portugal shaped the world map conquest after conquest. But as strong as that steamroller was, some people have always resisted to preserve their identity. The inhabitants of San Basilio de Palenque in Colombia are a perfect example of this will of resistance and survival that every single culture carries. P-L-A-E-N-Q-U-E, Palenque. forcefully removed from the West African coast to finally land in the Caribbean Sea in present-day Colombia, their ancestors broke the Spanish chains of slavery to create their own village and take back their lost freedom. Create their own village, take back their lost freedom. Moorish Science Temple of America having all these manufacturing companies, all these businesses, down to a community center, on top of that home office, and then all these temples all over the country. So, sound familiar? Since its creation, the inhabitants of San Basilio de Palenque have never stopped fighting to give meaning to the word victory. The American continent was initially inhabited by indigenous people. When the Spanish arrived here, they came in search of gold. They started to enslave the indigenous people and force them to work under the harshest of labor conditions in areas like mining and agriculture. So when they came over here, they didn't bring no slaves over here. They came over here looking for gold. For all the slave black guys. For all the I'm a slave from Africa guys. If you're a slave from Africa, then that has nothing to do with over here. If you're a slave from Africa, then that means that's where you were enslaved. And you should really want to go back there if that's where you're from. You guys are comfortable over here and don't want to go back there. Why? How come? Because you're not from over there, you're from over here. And they've been playing you people. They came over here in search of gold. They didn't come over here with nobody and these ships talking about they're trading with some people over here. Who are they trading with? They weren't trading with Aboriginal indigenous people because clearly they came here in search of gold and started enslaving indigenous people here. So if they came here and enslaved indigenous people, then there's no way that they came over here with ships to sell to indigenous people that they enslaved. That's, the story's whack. Shut the hell up. We've been over here in this land. And everybody knows that we've been over here in this land. And we're the Aboriginal indigenous people of this land. Many indigenous people started to die off because they were being worked to death by the Spanish. Many indigenous people also died as a result of diseases the Spanish brought. When the indigenous, big quotes, when the indigenous population started to decrease, the Spanish decided to start importing Africans. They had already seen slavery practiced in Africa, and they knew that Africans were very strong for this type of labor. The French and the Spanish and the English and the Portuguese, who the Black history guys are going to tell you were so intelligent and European, they kidnapped Africans who were double their size, double their height, and they put them on ships forcefully, and they didn't fight back. And then they brought them all over here, and these guys never tried to take over the ship, only maybe 2 times or something like that. Then they came over here, and then they were slaves over here. BS. Many indigenous people died as a result of the diseases that the Spanish brought. When the indigenous population started to decrease, the Spanish decided to start importing Africans that they had already seen practiced in Africa. When the Spanish arrived to Cartagena with their Africans, Cartagena became the first black port in Latin America.